This is a first. With this release, the M4 Mac Minis, software developers and other professionals are facing a real choice between a MacBook Pro and a Mac Mini for the very first time. And to get this going, I actually have two pairs here. The base model Mac Mini, the $599 one, and the base model MacBook Pro. And over here I've got the M4 Pro Mac Mini with 64 gigs of RAM, and I have the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. The 64 gigs of RAM is only available in the Mac Mini. It's not available in a MacBook Pro with the M4 Pro chip. Of course, mini PCs have been around for years. You can see a bunch of them on my desk here. But this year, we've seen an explosion in mini PCs that are powerful and efficient. And this is all thanks to Intel and AMD trying to catch up to Apple in designing efficient chips. But Apple just pushed ahead with the M4 and M4 Pro Mac Minis again. Gone are the days when the Mac Mini was just a little thing you buy for your grandma to use at home.
Oh, you're such a sweet grandson. Thank you so much.
Now with up to 64 gigs of RAM and the ability to outpace the M2 Max and the M2 Ultra in certain workflows, the Mac Mini is a serious contender. So here's the question. Could you potentially save $800 and choose a Mac Mini over a MacBook Pro? Huh? What are the trade-offs? What do you gain? What do you lose? There are obvious differences between a Mac Mini and a laptop, so I wanted to start with something that's not obvious. Performance. Will form factor affect performance, and by how much? Now you might have noticed I have another one here. The MacBook Pro lineup offers the M4 Max chip, which the Mac Mini does not. I don't think that's an accident. Now if you do extremely intensive work, like high-end machine learning, complex 3D rendering, or other tasks where the highest possible performance is critical, and you know you need an M4 Max chip, then the MacBook Pro is the only option. Those who seek out the M4 Max chip generally know exactly what they need, the level of power, and there's no equivalent in the Mac Mini lineup, at least until we might see the next generation of the Mac Studio maybe, but who knows. So I'm gonna put that one away, because 90% of professionals and developers will be more than satisfied with the M4 or the M4 Pro chip. But if you want to see my performance comparison where I compare MacBooks only, and that includes the M4 Max, I'll link to that video down below. The most demanding tasks are definitely Android Studio, especially when running Android emulators, and that's really taxing on the system, far more taxing than Xcode and iOS simulators, which are pretty native. It's all Apple design, so they're gonna be really seamless and integrated for this. I popped open this Android Studio, and it takes a little bit longer to open than this Android Studio. This is where the M4 Pro chip actually shines a little bit more, is IDEs that are a little bit heavier, things like Android Studio, which means anything from JetBrains is also going to fit into that category. And of course, running virtual machine is going to be up there for taxing your system. Let's just take a look at a Pixel 9 Pro opening up and see which one of these opens first. And let's go. Wow, okay. The M4 is actually going much faster for some reason. That was interesting. Let's open up another one and Pixel 9 go. Okay, so this is how it normally works. The M4 Pro is a little bit faster than the M4. Not by much, but it's gonna be a consistent kind of thing where you're gonna have to get used to it. If you're doing iOS development, you're gonna be dealing with iOS simulators. So let's start that up and go. Yeah, there we go. This one's already open. This one is still thinking about opening, and there we go. I'm a little surprised. I thought that iOS would be pretty much the same on these, but clearly the M4 Pro is definitely faster. It doesn't mean you can't do development on the M4. You can still do it, especially if you're only doing iOS development. It's going to be a beautiful machine for that. For Android, it's a little bit more resource intensive, so you might want to go with the M4 Pro, especially if you're doing cross-platform development. Now I'm going to pop open Xcode on both of the Mac Minis and see how they compare with the MacBooks. And let's go. Kind of the same, I guess, over there. Now let's pop open the project that I have here, which is just a Hello World project, and see which one opens first. Whoa! The M4 base model actually opened that faster. Interesting stuff. Let's run the simulator and see which one's faster. And let's go. Yes, this one popped up first, as to be expected. Oh, this one's behind there. And it's still turning on the app. This one already started the app, and now the app starts over here. It's pretty clear who the winner is here, the M4 Pro, but that's not really what we're comparing. Let's open up Xcode on the Mini Pro and the MacBook Pro, and let's go. So the Mac Mini opened it a little bit faster. Let's open the project. about the same. And now let's run the sim and go. Okay, it's about the same. That's what I thought. How does it compare with the M4? Starting Xcode, boom. Okay, not too bad, very tolerable. Open up our project, about the same, and let's go. It's thinking, okay. All right, about the same. The only real difference I saw here was between the M4s and the M4 Pros. I really don't see a difference between the M4 chips. Let's get a little bit more granular and get some real numbers by running some actual builds. Now I'm gonna run Xcode benchmark here, and we'll see if any of this matters. We are gonna see a difference in the Pro chips versus the regular chips, of course. But is there a difference in the form factor? I'm actually curious about this because I have no idea. Now, at some point, if we're dealing with something like a MacBook Air, which I've tested before, these don't have fans in it. So yeah, after a while, they will throttle if you push them hard enough. And I've shown this on the channel before. But all these machines have fans in them. The MacBooks and the Mac Minis. 102 degrees on the M4 Pro, but only 91 degrees on the M4. I'm hearing the fan spinning up on the M4 Pro, MacBook Pro. By the way, the Mac Mini M4 Pro is done. I wonder what this means. Is this like flipping my world upside down right now? My assumptions were that there will be no difference in their performance between the Minis and the MacBooks, but maybe I'm wrong. Both MacBooks finished after the Minis. Folks, this is really odd. I ran this a couple of times because I didn't believe this, but the MacBooks are faster at running the same exact build than their Mini counterparts. What is going on? M4 Pro, MacBook Pro got 94 seconds. Incidentally, the M4 version got 142 seconds, so quite a bit slower. But this is a multi-core build. Of course, most compilations like this are going to be multi-core. So since we have 10 performance cores here, and 4 performance cores here, it's gonna be a big difference there. But what I did not expect was that this Mac Mini is the exact same specs as the MacBook. 10 cores total, 4 performance, 4 efficiency, 16 gigs of RAM on both of these, and the time is more than 20 seconds difference. 142 over here on the MacBook Pro, 167 on the Mac Mini. You'd think that was odd if it was just a one-time occurrence, but no. It's repeated on the M4 Pro as well. So we got 94 seconds on the MacBook, 105 seconds, more than 10-second difference on the Mac Mini. And here we've got 14 cores total, 14 cores total on the MacBook Pro as well. Folks, this is kind of weird. It's an interesting discovery though, and something I did not expect. Now, are we gonna see the same kind of effect if we're using, let's say, an LLM locally? Let's go really basic. Llama 3.2, 1 billion parameter. It's not a very big LLM, but I just wanna get a baseline of how these machines behave relative to each other. So I'm gonna run ollama, a pretty common and easy tool to use. And let's run this one. Prompt is write a 1,000 word story and go. All happily writing their own little stories that nobody's ever gonna read. All that creativity going to waste. What a shame. On the M4 Pros, we've got 70 and 69. I know some of you are gonna comment about that, but that's very close. That's within the margin of error, and I kind of expect them to be the same here. Now here, we've got the same as well, 39.98 and 38.97, again within the margin of error. Let's take a break and talk about bug reports for a moment. They're often missing key details and leave developers stuck in endless back and forths. Sound familiar? Meet Jam, the one-click bug report devs love. It's like a screen recorder, but smarter. Jam automatically includes all the technical context developers need: console logs, network requests, WebSockets data, and even GraphQL parsing. And all the bug reporter had to do was click once. Jam integrates seamlessly with tools like Jira, Linear, and Slack, so you can send and assign tickets directly from your website or app. Faster bug reporting, faster fixing, happier developers. Get better bug reports free at jam.dev. I want to stress these out a little bit, and this will give us a sense whether the body is going to have any effect on how these machines handle intense load. So we're talking about running a machine learning model in a loop over and over and over again, and maybe we'll see some throttling. So right now I'm showing the thermals is nominal. My guess is that these 14-inch MacBook Pros are going to throttle, especially the Pro model. the M4 Pro model, before the Mac Minis. So I'm running an MLX model. It's Llama 3.1, 8 billion parameter, 100 times in a row. Let's go. All right, they're all generating text that nobody's ever gonna read. So far, the only sound I'm hearing is from the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. And it's showing that it's getting up to 94 degrees. Definitely hearing those fans. It's not throttling yet, which is interesting. Maybe soon. But this MacBook Pro, the M4, is staying at a nice cool 78 degrees Celsius. Nothing's happening there. Of course, it's a lot slower than this one, but the tables might turn if this thing starts to throttle. Just in case you're curious, Mac Mini M4 Pro, total power 15.6 watts. Most of that by the GPU right there. You can see the GPU usage is at 100%. Memory usage, this is a 64 gig machine, so not much. GPU usage here is 100%, 15.58 watts, about the same amount as the Mac Mini on the MacBook Pro. Now, we're using a lot less watts here. Total power is 8 watts on this machine and on this machine because these are the M4 processors. So far, thermals are nominal on all of them. Right now, you can see this is the MacBook Pro M4 Pro. The dead giveaway is that we have 2 fans. You can see 2 heat spots right there. We're about 43 degrees. That's pretty warm. What about our little Mac Mini friend here? I'm hearing fans on the Mac Mini. Mac Mini is not showing it's that warm, not as much as the MacBook Pro. And the fans I'm hearing, 47 degrees on the MacBook Pro. The fans I'm hearing are from this M4 Pro MacBook Pro. What about a little M4 MacBook Pro? You can see it only has 1 fan and we are at 37 degrees, 10 degrees lower than the M4 Pro. And what about our M4 Mac Mini? Look at that. It's nice and cool, 29 degrees, barely even sweating, barely even a temperature change.
A few moments later.
It's been a while and this is not throttling, so we're good to go. Failed experiment? Not really. I think it's good to know these kinds of things anyway. Now we're gonna set aside the M4s right now because they each have 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is not gonna be enough for what I'm about to show you. I wanna focus on the M4 Pro Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro because I wanna run a model here that's going to show it's gonna break things. It's gonna show the difference between what the Mac Mini can max out at, which is 64 gigs of RAM, and what a machine with less RAM can do. Now this machine, this MacBook Pro, has only 24 gigs of RAM. They go up to 48, but this will demonstrate what some people that are gonna be running a lot of RAM intensive things are going to experience with a machine with lower RAM like the MacBook Pro, and they'll get past that barrier with a machine like the Mac Mini, which is more RAM. All right, enough talking. Come on, I'm gonna run a machine learning thing. llama run Qwen 2.5 coder 32 billion parameter model. And I'm gonna do this on both of the machines and we'll see how that affects everything. So let's go. First, we're gonna keep an eye on the speed of generation. This one already started. Of course, it's going, but this one is not. We have green in the memory pressure on the Mac Mini, and we have some issues with the memory pressure really coming up against that wall on the MacBook Pro, even though this model, it's only 20 gigabytes. So it's really, really pushing hard. What llama is good at is figuring out the difference between what's gonna go on the GPU and what's gonna go on the CPU. Now, because llama is detecting that there's gonna be a little bit of a difficulty running all this on the GPU on the MacBook Pro, it's gonna take some of that and offload it to the CPU. That's why you'll see some CPU spiking going on here. And while you'll see that on the Mac Mini, there's nothing that happened on the CPUs at all in our history chart, and it's already done. We had 10 tokens per second, which is, you know, it's whatever it is. But here, it's not even done yet on the MacBook Pro, and look at that. We're running stuff on the CPU. We got CPU usage going on here. We've got CPU usage in the history on the performance cores. And look at that beautiful GPU line that was used right there. The GPU history chart is showing it was just that chunk of the GPU, and only the GPU was being used on the Mac Mini, perfectly fitting into our nice 64 gigs of RAM, only 20 being used. Memory pressure always in the green, right? Really nice and comfy. Here, it's still running, not very comfortable at all. Pretty much filling up our RAM, 23 out of the 24 being used, and we slowed down to 8 tokens per second here. And look at that GPU. It's not going all the way up like it did with the Mac Mini. It's up there, it's going spiky because it doesn't know how to use the full GPU because the model is so large relative to the RAM that we need. So it offloaded some to the CPU. And this is the kind of thing that you'll see in general with machines with more RAM. running larger machine learning models. So if you are in that group, or if you're in the group of people that wants to run more stuff on your machines, more virtual machines, if you're gonna need to get up to that 64 gigs of RAM, the Mac Mini is the way to go. So let's get out of here, and I'm gonna do sudo purge to clear out our memory, because I'm gonna show you a more dangerous approach. Now, let's say you weren't using llama or LM Studio or some other tool that figures out how to separate your model into what goes on the CPU and what goes on the GPU. We're gonna use MLX directly. MLX is a framework for Apple. This right here is going to break things, because I'm trying to run the Llama 3.1 Nemotron 70 billion parameter model on a machine with 24 gigabytes of RAM. On this machine with 64, it'll run. Go. There it is, it's running. And I'm using MLX here. Now, if we keep an eye on that memory pressure, there was a little bit of orange there, but now it's okay. We're using 50 out of 64 here. We're good, we're green, and it's running. It's generating, we're using the GPU. We got a little CPU spike, but that's not bad. Now we've settled. What happens if we do the same thing on this 24 gig machine? And yes, I have tried this before. It's not gonna end well. So check out that memory pressure right there. Oh my gosh. So we have a little bit of a message here that says generating a model that requires that much RAM, almost 40 gigs of RAM on a, did you see that? Yeah, this is not looking so good. I don't know what that lightning flash was, but that's not good. Memory pressure's in the orange constantly. This machine is just one unhappy machine right now. Don't try running anything on this. In fact, the haptic works, but the machine just froze on me. I can't even move the mouse. The screen froze, everything froze. Over here, this is not the best. We have 6.1 tokens per second. It's pretty slow, but it's still running a 70 billion parameter model. Yeah, on a Mac Mini. Not super usable, but the machine is happy. This machine is gonna restart. Yeah, this is what we get. Should I report it or should I ignore it? It was my fault, I'll ignore it. When choosing between the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro, portability is a key factor, especially for software developers who may need to work in various environments. I usually travel with my 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, a typical economy seat tray is 16 by 10, and I bought this tray, which is 16 by 12, so I can demonstrate how small that really is. My MacBook Pro barely fits on one of these tray tables. Now, usually this is pretty uncomfortable, so you're sitting up against this, and you can't even put your lid down because the person in front of you is sitting right there, so you kind of have to go like this. Your hands are back, and you kind of have to balance the screen here and hope that the person in front of you doesn't lean back. This is one of the only times when I actually wish for a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which would actually fit quite nicely, and I can have a little, I don't know, piece of cheese over here or something. Anyway, my opinions on 14 versus 16 I already outlined in a different video. I'll link to that down below. But a Mac Mini setup would actually shine here. You can have your keyboard, you can maybe fit your mouse in there. It'd be a little tight still, but this is the lower extreme. And you can get a nice little 13-inch display like this one and still have room for your drink. By the way, the Mac Mini doesn't need to sit on your tray. A lot of airplanes now have electrical outlets. You can just keep that down there next to your seat or even in your seat. You can even have your reheated airplane delicious meal right here in the front. Look how much space you have. Heck, on an airplane, put your keyboard on a lap and maybe even bring little loops to hang your monitor on the seat in front of you, and you're golden. You have that tray table back, baby. Amazing. Once you get to your destination, hotel or otherwise, you can spread out, set up a little semi-permanent station there. You can also make the Mac Mini portable setup a bit more of a permanent thing if it's your only machine. Yes, the setup and teardown is not as easy as a laptop, but it only takes a little bit longer and you'll get the modularity benefits. Just out of curiosity, here's what you'll be carrying if you're carrying a MacBook Pro around. This is the 14-inch variety, almost 2 kilograms. Not bad. And almost 2.5 kilograms with the 16-inch. Now with a Mac Mini, you need the screen, and this one is one of the lighter ones. Mac Mini, this is the K7 from Keychron, which is very light and portable. Logitech Anywhere, which is very light. And a few cables. So we're at 2.1 kilograms. That's actually less than I thought it would be. Not bad. Now it is small, but you need the extra keyboard, monitor, and mouse to carry around, so it could be cumbersome to carry all that to different locations. So you can come up with different solutions to do that. MacBook itself weighs more than the Mac Mini, but once you add all the peripherals, even the lightest ones, then things even out. Now one thing to consider is not only is it going to be easier to carry the MacBook Pro around, but also it has a battery. So while you have the flexibility of setting things up and the flexibility of picking your own peripherals with a Mac Mini, you're going to be chained to a wall unless you come up with a clever solution. Depending where you are, of course. If you have the ability to bring along a pretty large battery that you can plug the Mac Mini into, work that way, that's possible too. But you're not going to be able to beat running one of these babies in low power mode for 24 hours or so. When evaluating the Mac Mini or the MacBook Pro, it's essential to consider their connectivity options, as these determine how you integrate peripherals and external devices into your workflow, because they're not equal. For example, I use the SD card reader all the time, but that's just my workflow. You might not even care about the SD card reader, especially if you're a software developer. But for getting videos off of a camera, it's very important. One thing you'll notice right away is that the Mini has 5 USB-C ports. 3 of them are Thunderbolt, 3 of them are just USB, while the MacBooks only have 3. They both have the headphone jack. I actually don't know the specs on the headphone jacks and whether they're the same or not, but those that really care about the impedance levels on those will probably have an external amplifier anyway, along with a D-to-A converter. Audio nerds, you out there? You know what I'm talking about. What that means is that even if you're using 3 Thunderbolt peripherals on either the Mac Mini or the MacBook Pro, you still have 2 free USB ports on the Mac Mini, but you're out of ports on the MacBook Pro. They both have the HDMI port, nice and handy, but only one of them has the Ethernet port. And this is a biggie because the Mac Mini can go up to 10 gigabit Ethernet, which is really fast. If you want to have high-speed internet on, like really high-speed internet on your MacBook Pro, you're gonna need to use something like this, Thunderbolt 2 Ethernet adapter. This is a 2.5 gigabit one, and the 10 gigabit ones are this big. I'll link to some down below if you're interested. One thing to note that neither model includes USB-A ports. And if you have USB-A peripherals like dongles or keyboards and mice often come with USB-A receivers, which is kind of annoying. So you always have to have either hubs or little adapters. I found only one keyboard that actually has a USB-C receiver, and it's this Keychron V2. And not only does it have a USB-C receiver, but it also has a USB-A receiver, and they're held in place magnetically. Every keyboard manufacturer should do that. Why don't they? Let's talk about value for the money. When choosing between the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro, it's essential to assess their value propositions, especially for software developers seeking optimal performance within budget constraints. Because if you look at the lowest price Mac Mini, it's actually about 3 times cheaper than the lowest price MacBook Pro. And most of us already have a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse. But if you don't, if you're starting from scratch, then you're gonna need to buy those additionally. I've already talked about the benefits of being able to pick your own devices and then being able to upgrade them at will. You want a new mouse, you can buy a new mouse. You want a different keyboard, you can buy a different keyboard. With a MacBook, you're stuck with what you have. And of course, with every single option, you have different choices, something cheaper or something more expensive. And also, since the Mac Mini is sort of portable, as you've seen, we can have a different setup at home versus a mobile setup. Whereas at home, you'll have a more comfy setup and mobile will be more streamlined. Now I've plotted all the different models of Mac Minis against the MacBook Pros, and consistently we can see that the MacBook Pros are pretty much $800 more expensive across the board here. So if you're budget conscious, your peripherals will have to stay under that, and you can definitely get peripherals for way under that. Notice one interesting thing about this chart here is that the Mac Mini is the only model that comes in 256 gigabyte variety for storage. You don't get a MacBook Pro with 256 anymore. Now it's 512 minimum. Now you have to wonder who's gonna want 256? Well, believe it or not, even in software development, there are cases for this. If you just want the power of the M4 chip, but you don't need all the storage, or you're using external storage. Embedded system developers, machine learning engineers with external storage, you're gonna need that. Compiler and language tooling developers is another case. Or data scientists working with synthetic data, just trying to set up a pipeline. Also, DevOps and CI/CD engineers. Testers, too, depending what kind of testers. For those that don't have very large needs for storage, that 256 model, not available in MacBook Pro. Things get a little bit more hairy with the M4 Pros because we have 12 cores and 14 cores to pick from, but you can see that the price scales pretty much the same way across those devices, except this very outer edge, which is covered only by Mac Minis. We've got the 64 gigabyte RAM version only available for Mac Minis, but across all the Mac Minis in the M4 Pro line, 12 and 14 core. And we have the 8 terabyte version. Now, the case for the 8 terabyte version or even 4 terabyte version is gonna be super niche. I can't think of a case like that unless you are doing machine learning and you're gonna keep all your models and things on the machine. But with Thunderbolt 5 on those machines, there really isn't that much need anymore to have internal storage unless you really need that form factor and you don't wanna have anything else dangling off of this thing. Also, it's been found that Mac Minis are gonna be sort of upgradable with their storage, so you could buy custom-made SSD in there. So that right there, personally, I think it's kind of a waste of money, but I'm sure some people out there, if you are one of those people that wants 8 terabytes in your Mac Mini, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be curious to find out. But we do have a pretty consistent range here. The difference in price for the M4 Pros between the Mac Minis and the MacBook Pros seems a little bit tighter here, especially if you're considering the 12 core versus 14 core and you're not sure which one you want to get. But that's a whole different topic, whether you want the bin variety or the unbin variety. It all depends on how powerful a chip you need. And you're not saving that much money. You're saving maybe $200 between the models if you're jumping to a higher core count. So I'd say that's a worthy upgrade, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of compilation and a lot of processor use. For people that are running Python or JavaScript, things of that nature, interpreted languages, you probably don't need the 14 core. You could probably get away with 12 cores. But then again, you're probably going to get into some tooling that's going to require multi-core and it's going to save you a little bit of time to run those processes. Now, I use both Windows and Macs, and I've been running mini PCs at home and office for development work with Visual Studio and home server projects. And one of the biggest advantages of having external peripherals is their reusability across different setups. This modularity is invaluable for maintaining a flexible and adaptable workspace. One other thing to consider is resale value. Now, historically, Mac Minis retain reasonable resale value, though it may be slightly lower compared to MacBook Pros due to their desktop nature. MacBook Pros generally maintain higher resale values. I've sold quite a bunch of MacBook Pros in private market sales like on eBay and Craigslist, and I usually end up getting more for that than I would if I were to do an Apple trade-in. For a long time, we had desktops and laptops, but with mini PCs, things are starting to converge a bit, especially with the possibility of input devices being wearable. And wearable displays are already here in the form of smart glasses or goggles. I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't have one of those new X-Real glasses. I should get one to check it out. Apple Vision Pro is another thing I had in here. I did a review on it. But I could just imagine in the not too distant future where both laptops and desktops are gone the way we know them. And all we have is like a pocket-sized mini that just connects to all your devices and peripherals wirelessly. And of course, by that time, they're gonna be even more powerful than the M4 Max. Now, bringing it back to our current time, really, there's no reason why Apple couldn't put an M4 Max chip in the Mac Mini, except to not cannibalize the laptop market. So they went with the M4 and the M4 Pro, which just gives us enough pause to consider the Mini as a portable solution for developers or really any other professional use case. If you love the idea of using the most powerful mobile silicon, but don't want to pay extra for the other bells and whistles that a MacBook Pro will give you, or maybe you just prefer to pick your own peripherals, then the Mac Mini is for you. You can give it to your grandma, but you can use it yourself too. If you need ultimate power, then go with the M4 Max MacBook Pro. For those people considering it, you know who you are. And if you just want the simplicity of carrying one thing and one thing only, the MacBook Pros are your thing. For more detailed information about the MacBook Pros and the different chips that are available, watch this video here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.